Hey everyone, welcome back. In this video, I am going to walk you through Kubernetes Init Containers. Most engineers solve startup dependencies by writing complex retry logic inside their application code. But here is why that is the wrong approach. Because when you do that, you end up with brittle, bloated services that are harder to maintain and test, while init containers can handle these dependencies cleanly before your main application ever starts. Let us dive into the mechanics of init containers, how they solve real-world startup problems, and how to use them effectively in your cluster. Specifically, we will cover what init containers actually are, the problem of race conditions in microservices, how they sequence pod startup, and the real-world production scenario involving database dependencies. We will then walk through the implementation, configuration patterns, and common debugging pitfalls. Watch the full video without skipping any content to understand it better. Before we get into the topic, a small request to you. I have already uploaded many technical videos on different technologies and tools. We share more knowledgeable content every day. So if you are interested in learning and want to improve your skills, make sure you have subscribed to our channel and joined our WhatsApp community. The join link is available in the description or scan the QR code shown on the screen. Let us get started. So what is an init container exactly? Think of them as a gatekeeper for your pod. They are specialized containers that run to completion before any of your main application containers even start. While a regular container is designed to stay running, an init container must finish its task and exit with a status code of 0. If it fails, Kubernetes will restart the pod automatically, ensuring your application never starts in an unready state. This is exactly how you enforce strict startup order. Now, why does this matter? Let us talk about race conditions. In a typical microservices architecture, you might have a payment processing service and a SQL database. If the payment service starts 10 seconds faster than the database, it will immediately fail when it tries to open a connection. Most teams try to fix this by adding a script that sleeps or retrieves inside their application code. But that is messy. You are mixing infrastructure concerns with business logic. It makes your application code harder to test, and it hides the real dependency from the cluster orchestrator. Here is how it works internally. When you define an init container, Kubernetes ensures it runs first. The main application container is kept in a pending state until that initialization process completes successfully. Once the init container finishes, the runtime starts your main container. This creates a deterministic, reliable sequence. It removes the guesswork and ensures your services are only running when their required environment is fully prepared. Consider this. An online payment platform serving 5,000 transactions per minute faced frequent deployment failures. Their core API would crash every time they deployed because the database took longer to accept connections than the API took to start. They were tired of managing complex retry logic in their Go application. After implementing a simple init container using a busybox image to ping the database port, their deployment success rate hit 100%. The API simply would not start until the database was reachable. It is a simple, robust change that saved their team hours of manual troubleshooting. Let us look at how you actually define this. In your pod manifest, you add an init container section. Notice we use a very lightweight busybox image here. The command uses netcat to check if the database service is listening on port 3306. The loop continues until the connection succeeds. Only then does the main API server container start. This code is clean, it is portable, and it keeps your main application logic focused on payments, not networking. When you run this, you can see the logs of the init container as it waits. You will see those status messages appearing in the logs while the network check happens. Once the database accepts the connection, the init container exits. you can see the pod status change from pending to running, and the API starts instantly. This gives you immediate visibility into why a pod might be stuck. Another powerful use case is generating configuration files dynamically. Imagine your app needs a configuration file that includes a dynamically assigned pod IP or a secret key generated at runtime. You can use an init container to write that file to a shared empty DL volume. Then, your main application container simply mounts that same volume and reads the config. The init container does the heavy lifting, keeping your main image smaller and more secure. Now, what are the common mistakes? First, you must always set resource limits on init containers. If you do not, a buggy init container could consume all the memory on a node, causing a kernel panic. Second, be very careful with infinite loops. If your connection check never succeeds, the pod will just sit there forever, never reaching a ready state. Finally, do not use massive images. Use small ones like Alpine or BusyBox. If you pull a 2 GB image just to run a 5-line shell script, you are just slowing down your deployment speed significantly. Avoiding these will save you hours of debugging time. So when should you use these? Use them whenever your application has a strict dependency on another service, like a database or a cache. They are also perfect for setting up custom file permissions on shared volumes, which often requires root access that your main application container should not have. If you need to register a pod with an external service registry or fetch dynamic certificates, init containers are the industry standard for this task. Do not try to force this logic into your main container code. Take a moment to review each point shown on screen. To summarize, init containers run sequentially before your main application containers. They effectively enforce startup order and wait for required services. Always use lightweight images to keep your deployments fast. Use shared volumes if you need to pass generated data or configurations to your application. And please always set resource limits to prevent any runaway processes from starving your nodes. These are the core principles for building resilient, production-ready Kubernetes services. I believe this video will definitely be a useful video. If you like the video, please do like and hype the video. Also share it with your friends and groups. It may be useful to somebody else. If you have any doubts or any requests, please let me know in the comments. Make sure you have subscribed to stay updated for our regular videos. Join our WhatsApp community using the link in the description because we share more knowledgeable content every day. Thank you for watching. See you soon in the next video.